So the last couple of weeks, our nation has seen a lot of things. It's seen um, social isolation, some emotional damage that people are taking from that, certainly tensions everywhere, social media not helping that. And then to throw in the racial tensions and just encountering friends and family who are directly and indirectly affected by that. And I remembered in the book of Micah, in chapter 6 and verse 8, uh, Micah's reflecting on what God requires of mankind. And he just simply says that God has told us what is good. And what does the Lord require of us but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. And it just reminded me of this balance between justice and love and humility that has to exist for a positive society and a positive world to exist. And what we're seeing is a lot of imbalance there where everybody's screaming for justice, but there's no love or humility in that screaming. Or others, like leaders like us and others, perhaps are trying to call for love and humility, but people feel like what we're really displaying is a lack of justice. And so just a reminder to all of us to try and seek that balance and encourage others to seek balance of justice, love, and humility. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Amen.
True that. Truer words haven't been spoken, Humility is a foreign concept in our leadership. That's a sad statement.
Christoph, I've got a reordering here a little bit of the agenda. Does anyone have additional items they want on the agenda before we start? I just wanted to welcome Norman Bardsley to our gathering this afternoon. And he, I think, said he could stay here an hour. Does anyone else have time restraints today that they have to hop off? Okay, Norman, you want to share just a little bit about the new steering campaign and?
So I'd like to ask that we do introductions because not only.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Not only are we welcoming Norman Bardsley, who used to be on this task force many years ago, but Hector Malvido of Ensuring Opportunity.
He just came on. Yeah.
He just came on, and he's a new addition to Ensuring Opportunity. So for his benefit, first of all, welcome Hector, and for his benefit,
absolutely.
If not anybody else's,
thanks for reminding us.
Thank you so much, Doug, for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Hector Malvido. As Doug said, I am the Policy Advocacy and Community Engagement Manager with EO. Started about 4 weeks ago, and excited to continue this work that you all have been doing. Apologies for you not seeing my face. I promise you there's a very handsome person looking at a blank computer right now. My camera is just not working right now, and hopefully we'll get that fixed soon. But anyway, thank you, and happy to be a part of this.
We'll take your word for it, Hector. We'll go to your left. Leslie is joining us, but also incognito. Leslie, you want to introduce yourself? Okay, not now. All right. Then we go over to Laura.
Oh, I'm Laura Sanchez from San Ramon Valley United Methodist Church.
Carrie.
Good morning. Or afternoon, excuse me. I'm Carrie Vierink. I'm the Outreach and Development Manager at Hope Solutions.
Sophia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Reverend Sophia DeWitt, Program Director with East Bay Housing Organizations.
Mark.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark McMahon. I'm with St. John Vianney Church in Walnut Creek, and happy to be here today and to see everyone.
Gabrielle? No, not Gabrielle. I don't have a name with the person underneath you, Doug.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. No, Elizabeth on the top.
Well, on my screen, the person who's under me is
Oh, Elizabeth
Gabriella.
Nardi. There you go. Thank you. We saw your lovely face, but just no name with it.
That's weird. Hi, Elizabeth Nardi. I'm Communications Manager with Shelter Inc.
Now we can see the name. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Doug is drinking, but here he is.
I'm Doug Leach, and I'm a member of Danville Congregational Church.
The person leading us in prayer was Scott.
Yeah, I'm Scott Williams. I'm the lead pastor at First Christian Church in Pleasant Hill, and my camera is broken too.
Norman.
You're remuted, Norman.
You're muted, Norman.
There you go.
I'm Norman Bardsley. I'm with Lafayette Christian Church.
Thank you. Gabriella.
I'm Gabriella Perez, and I'm with Covia Community Services. I'm the director of Home Match. It's a home sharing program.
Joan.
I'm Joan Liston, member of the St. Perpetua Catholic Church, and also a member of our Social Justice Committee. And if I could have approval of the minutes at some point in the meeting, I'd appreciate it from last month. Great, thank you.
We'll get there.
We'll do that, yes. Christoph now, pastoral associate at St. Perpetua's. Jan.
Jan Warren, Lafayette Christian Church.
Elizabeth, the other Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Robinson, I'm the acting pastor at Orenda Community Church.
All right, great. Yes, and now
And you want to go back and see if Leslie's...
Leslie, are you back or are you still hiding? All right.
All right.
She said in the chat, she has a chat that says that she tried to unmute herself, but we couldn't hear her. So I don't know what's going on with that, but there's a chat from her.
Oh,
okay.
Okay. All righty. So then, yes, Joan, I think that's what we will do next is minutes from the last meeting.
There was one correction presented by Doug, and that was his discussion of AB 1851, which referred also to the Bill 899, which should read SB instead of AB. And that's the only correction that I have so far.
Okay. Does anybody else have any requests of changes or additions? Okay. I take the silence for a no.
Thank you.
Okay, now if I can move back to Norman and have him share about the MFAC steering campaign. We're all in this together.
Thank you, Jan. Yes, we, as many of you know, MFAC decided that it would like to pull together a special group and launch a special campaign to look into the impact of COVID-19, not just because there are some special advocacy needs there, but also because this event is highlighting a lot of the systematic breakdowns of our social net and our social system as a whole. So the purpose of this campaign is twofold. One is we think that the recovery effort is going to take many months, if not years, and we will need to advocate on the way regarding the way that people are helped to get back on their feet. But more importantly, we want to make sure that this is not just a recovery. I mean, people talk about just recovery, and I hope it doesn't mean just a recovery. It has to be a transformation. And so we're trying to see in particular how we can get more people in the faith communities involved, and how we can align better with all the other organizations that are working on one or other aspect of this challenge. So we've had two Zoom meetings at which we discussed, they were called training meetings. There were about 30 people involved. And we asked people to tell us what was the most important issue that they were concerned about. And several people said that they were very worried about rent payments. Just the moratorium, as one person described, is just kicking the can down the road. And if people don't get their job back until August or so, they're going to be they may be faced with having to pay 5 months back rent, and they have to pay it by November 15th. So this is one of the issues that we're going to be looking into. We've already started to gather information. We're looking for we're calling this a research action because you know, it's a supplementary activity to what we've always been doing. So we're trying to collect both stories and data. So in particular, we're looking for individual stories of people who are either haven't been able to pay their rent or are struggling to pay it and have had to use money that they should have been using in other ways. So stories is one of the things that we're looking for, and the other is data. We get there's a lot of anecdotes around. There's some data at the national level. There's data at the state level. There's even data at the Bay Area level. But getting detailed information and statistics at the county level or the community level is more difficult. So that's what we're going to focus on. And we've begun to collect that data. And as I say, we don't want to duplicate effort that others are doing. And so we would be looking to work with EBHO and any other organization that either is doing such a survey or collecting data or can help us guide it. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of this effort and hear back from you, either if you are able to join us or if you have concerns about you know, how this effort may complicate what you're doing, or you know, just how we should interact with you. I don't know. I know you discussed COVID impact last time, and part of the reason I want to listen today is just to see, you know, whether there are ways in which you want to follow up, so we can be aware of that and discuss how we complement one another. But it's not too late for any of you as individuals to join. We're going to have another meeting this week, probably Thursday at 10 a.m. So if you are interested in joining, just let me know, and I'll put my email address into the chat. That's all, John, for now.
Okay, thank you. Any
All right.
questions for Norman? Thank you. So I'd like to drop down. I'll mention I didn't get a report from Jamie. The only thing I remember, because I can't find my notes from the homeless task force meeting, was that the county has added homeless data to their, you know, the coronavirus site that you can go to daily, the cchealth.org. And they have separated out information on the homeless and how the COVID is affecting them. Otherwise, I'd like to skip the city stuff for now and start with Home Match. Gabriella?
Yeah, thank you. So for Home Match, this past month in May, we actually had a great turnout in terms of things are picking up a bit. We just had a match that was at the end of May. 2 individuals moved together in Concord, so that was really exciting. And we are matching again. Things are moving as normal. We actually had, I'm trying to get the numbers for you. So we had 1 match. We have now 2 active home providers that just joined in May, 3 active seekers. We're getting a lot more home provider calls, which is really exciting because that's what we've had an issue with in the past, is getting people to open up their homes. And if people don't know our program, we're a home sharing program. So we work primarily, anybody over the age of 18 can apply to our program. However, most of our participants are older adults. The average age of our home provider is 76. 90% are females, and most of them are on fixed income and join our program and are looking for a housemate because they are needing to either bring in extra income to supplement, what they have, or looking for companionship. We have a lot of older adults that are dealing with social isolation. And in terms of home seekers, the average age of our home seeker is, I think, upper 60s. About 80% of them or a bit more are female also, and are also on fixed income. So our job is really just to try to match and introduce individuals together. What we're working on right now is we're putting together a COVID-19 handbook in terms of like shared housing, just because we've had some home providers that are really concerned about COVID-19 and being in a shared space. For example, only 50% of our active home providers right now want to be matched. So we have a lot of home seekers that are looking, but only 50% of our, those who want to open their home are really open to the idea. So we're putting together a booklet that I can send to everybody, once we have that completed. And then, yeah, I think we're seeing an uptick already this week. We've had 2 home providers already join since the beginning of June. So we're excited about that. And yeah, and we have a document. We're working on COVID-19 and why COVID-19 language around why shared housing is important. Our thing is that it uses, already existing housing stock. This is something that is an alternative to affordable housing and the creation of affordable housing. And so this is something that we're really trying to push and let people know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
What's the best way to contact you? Because I'm aware of someone in Contra Costa and someone in San Francisco who might be interested.
Yeah, I can send you guys in the chat my information. We're in Home Match is in 4 county areas. So we are in San Francisco, we're in Contra Costa County, we're in Marin, and we're not all of Alameda, but we're in Fremont and Hayward. An individual to qualify for the county area needs to either live, work, or go to school in that area that they want to apply to. One thing I will say is that the rents in Contra Costa County are much cheaper than in San Francisco. So you're going to see a variety of what home providers are charging, but I'll send you my information. And then if they're outside of my area, I can connect you to that director.
Gabriela, hi, I have a question. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I've never heard about Home Match, so this is awesome. This is really awesome. I also have contacts in San Francisco who I think would really love this. Speaking of which, my first question is, with you mentioning, that rents are cheaper in Concord, if someone was living in San Francisco and they were applying for Home Match, but they would want to move to Concord to the Home Match there, is that something that would be possible?
If they were working or going to school in Contra Costa County. Unfortunately, if they're not working or going to school in the county, then they technically wouldn't qualify. Because our goal is to keep people within their county areas. Because our goal is people can age in place. And so we were trying to so that's one of our prerequisites, is that if they don't live in the county, but if they're working or going to school there, they would qualify. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And then just one more question. On top, in addition to being part of the county that they're looking to be in, is there any other prerequisites that they need, like minimum income? They need to fall under a certain age group, or is there anything that I should know about?
Yeah, no. So basically, with the application process for both home providers and home seekers, outside of the prerequisite of living, working, or going to school in their county area, they just have to be over the age of 18. We do a background check. It's a soft check. So we don't look at credit. All we're looking at is if there's been tax liens or evictions or criminal history. If there's been a tax lien, like say if there's been one, usually we just have a conversation about that and then create like a payment plan. If there's been more than one, then generally that's a conversation about seeing if what has occurred. We also do ID verification. So they just have to have some form of ID that we can verify. And then we do income verification. With that though, it's just looking at what form of income they have coming in. So they do have to have something. If they're not working, at least have having public benefits. Like most of our applicants are on SSI. So we
Right.
just verify that.
I get, sorry to take up so much time. I have two more questions. For the criminal or the eviction, is there an appeal process? And final question, is this available to undocumented individuals?
So we're working on making it available to undocumented individuals. The issue that came up there was that the system, the third party we're using for background checks wasn't allowing us, like you needed to have a social security number. However, we're moving to a different vendor for background checks. So we believe that that's going to allow us now to be working with individuals that are undocumented. But you and I can connect and I can like give you more information about that. And then in terms of the appeal process, so if generally what happens is an individual would state if they have a criminal history to us in the application, and then we'll run the background check. If they disclose it to us, they just have to sign a disclosure form, informing us as to what occurred. However, if there was, because a lot of our clients are older adults that are vulnerable, it's a vulnerable population. So anything of like arson, anything that's hurting another individual, that would disqualify them from the program.
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer, and I would love to connect with you.
Okay. Hector, can you put your information in the chat box? Are you able to do that, or are you on a phone?
Absolutely. I'll slap that on
Okay.
there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All righty, Karen Hernandez, I don't see. Elizabeth Nardi with Shelter Inc.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm going to pull up some numbers for you. Well, we continue to be very busy with obviously COVID and answering that call. The last time I was with you all, I shared with you our COVID hotline, so I can give you some updated numbers on that. We started that really at the beginning of April, though I have numbers from March 18th through June 1st. So far from the COVID hotline, which again is money to help people who are affected somehow by COVID-19. Either they've had the virus, they've been impacted because their jobs were, because of shelter in place, they couldn't go to their jobs. We have served 189 households, and we've allocated about $333,000. And just so there's clarity on that, that right now is only in Contra Costa County. There is a COVID hotline that got funded in Solano, but it's a lot less resources there right now, a lot less money to hand out. So really that's all Contra Costa money and numbers. And I, again, after this meeting can share with you all the flyers that we have for the hotline, and we have them in both English and Spanish, so I can get that to you. The COVID hotline, as well as our other eviction prevention hotline, continue to be obviously very busy. There's like averaging, I mean, like 600 calls, 680 calls for the COVID hotline since it started. And prevention is just going up, where they're in like the 800 calls for the last few months, which is quite high. And that's even with eviction moratoriums and things like that, as people try and figure out, how to pay for basic necessities as well as housing. And another reminder on the COVID hotline, it's a lot broader than our prevention-based hotline. So COVID hotline, the money can be used for utility bills, for rent, past, future rent that's due. And then we have some gift cards and food and things like that that we can also offer people. The other thing I just wanted to share with this group was that we did get funding, and I think, again, I mentioned it last time, but I have it for sure now. We also got funding through the CARES Act for our veterans program. So we also have quite a bit of help that we're offering to veterans right now. So I don't know if any of you work in that field or have people to refer, but the CARES Act did provide more funding for our supportive service veteran families program. And so that is what's different about that for us, is that we can also use that money to help get veterans that are actually unsheltered and on the street into, we can pay for hotel rooms, we can pay for all kinds of different help in that way. So That's a very good part of the program. And I have a flyer for that as well that I can also share with this group once I send all the notes and everything in. And that's all I can think of right now. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Elizabeth. This is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I had heard that the number for the COVID-19 hotline that was on the flyer was flooded with so many calls that they had to go to a different number. Is that true?
So that number, there's a couple of things. That number was set up specifically for COVID. So there have been so many calls at certain times where it kicks into our other prevention hotline. And so there's kind of like a piggybacking system going on there. But they should, if it's unfortunate, but people just have to keep trying and then hopefully leave a message and we do get back to you. And we have actually at Shelter Inc. pulled so many people, like case managers and different things like that, from kind of the regular assignments to be able to help and answer these calls. But another thing we really do need is more prevention, more COVID-19 people on the hotline that can speak Spanish. That's one of the people we're looking for right now specifically. So if anyone knows anything on that, do let us know. But it does eventually kick over. That is kind of correct, Mark. It does kick over to our prevention line, but they're going to have to be rerouted back to the case managers that are handling prevention. So it's unfortunate that it's been so busy.
I can't pull up the note at the moment, but someone had given me a 510 number as an alternative.
I do not think there should be a 510 number. They're definitely 925 numbers. So I think there is another, I don't know if it's like Catholic Charities. There is another like hotline COVID that is out there as well. But it's not ours. Ours is definitely a 925 number. And the only other one would be a Solano number, and it's a 707.
Okay. And then my other question is, how are you doing on funding? I mean, you've had all these requests flooding in and you've funded quite a bit. So it doesn't sound like you're out of money yet for that special need, huh?
So we've been really, really lucky with the funding that's come through. We have some Tipping Point has been one of the main, they've done like a $30 million pledge to raise money for all different charities in the Bay Area, but they've been a big, big help with this hotline. And then even some of the cities are starting to get it to give us for this funding as well. So, our grants writers are working like crazy and they just continue to go after the different avenues, but it has been foundations, corporations, as well as now some municipalities, which are doing funding for it as well. So it's definitely been a lot, but the need is so great. So we just continue to try and get more. And you had emailed, and I appreciate that. And I should make it clear with this group, there's no documentation that's required with getting this funding. We don't require proof of citizenship or anything like that. So.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
You just have to, do you have to verify they're in the city or?
Yeah.
I mean, the county?
Just
the county?
Yeah. Address. Yeah, exactly. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is that we are also, we're actually operating 2 motels for the Project Room Key. One is in Concord and one just opened in late May in Solano County in Fairfield. The Travel Lodge, the one in Concord is at the Concord Premier Inn. And the Concord one holds about 68 people. And these are all people that were in the county shelters and would be medically compromised if they were to get the virus. And so now they've been there, and we're actually seeing, this was it is a temporary shelter. It runs for a few months. We don't know exactly how much longer it will go. It's through July at this point for the Concord one. But we're seeing some really good results of actually some of our case management working there. We're getting some people housed into different programs. So that's been really, really, really great, actually.
Do the veterans have to have COVID or do they just need to be a veteran?
It can just be a veteran, and no, it's really just trying to get veterans, especially unsheltered veterans, off the streets or out of their cars or wherever. So it's actually pretty wide open where the CARES Act part of it is concerned.
Very, very good stuff. Thank you. What have we got here? Carrie, Hope Solutions.
Hi again, everyone. Just going to give you some updates from last time. We have just recently updated our website volunteer section with our furnishing needs for June based on the number of folks who will be housed this month. The last couple of months, we've housed the same kind of similar numbers, 40 people, or 40 households, I should say. It's actually more than 40 people, but 40 households have been housed. And so if anyone is interested in that, I also sent it to Jan, but it's on our hopesolutions.org/volunteer page. The other update is that our backpack drive for all of our youth is about to kick off. We are going to serve approximately 410 youth this year with backpacks full of all the things that they need for their classes. It's going to be a little different this year. Sanibel Arnold, who is our volunteer and donations coordinator, has been leading that effort. In fact, she just sent me a text and looks like we're going to kick off later in the week. But we've been working with, I don't know if anyone's familiar, but there's a provider called Sydney Page, or a company called Sydney Page. And it's going to allow us for organizations to be able to purchase backpacks online and have them sent to us. So it will limit in the time of COVID, it's going to limit and change the dynamic we normally have, where people collect all different things and then come into the office and put them together, as we're aware of all the risks associated with that right now. So we're working to mitigate that. So we're excited to kick that off, and it will run through the end of July. At that point, our case managers will distribute them to all of our residents who need them. So we're working on getting a specific announcement out once that's live and ready to go through our regular newsletter channels, but also on our website. You can always reach out to Sanibel directly or myself directly, and we'll make sure, if that's something you're really interested in, we'll make sure that you get that. Secondarily, a big part of our summer is our summer camps that we usually host for 5 weeks. And that format is changing this year. We're having our first ever summer virtual camps. Actually, one of the first steps we did was to check in with our current volunteers as our youth enrichment program is starting the planning process to see who is interested and available. And we've got 20 folks so far. So we're really excited about that. They're meeting again tomorrow. There's still absolutely room for people who are interested in helping out with summer camps. It really runs the range of topics, and what they're working to do in a nutshell is to sort of get like for lack of a better term, a camp bag or a goodie bag of all the things that they're going to work on for the week, and then they'll use that. They'll do a new one every week with whatever theme it is. And so I know they're really working through all those details, but if that's something that you want to know more about and be involved with, we are welcoming folks to not only help with the camps, but help deliver the items that we need to the families who will be participating. And so that is definitely a work in progress. It's something we've not done before, but we're getting very creative, and the youth enrichment program has really spent a lot of time working with everyone, and this is definitely an area of concern because of the lack of technology. And then at the end of the year, schools wanted the Chromebooks back if they were able to get them, and now we want to do virtual camps. So we're really working to make sure. We've even gone as far, we've been collecting computers and getting them refurbished so that everyone can continue to have that contact with the resources that we have available. So that is all for now. Are there any questions?
Yeah, the Chromebooks were given out through the school districts?
In many cases where they're available, yes. The school districts, and we've just been tracking, and very closely with our case managers. If they didn't have one, we worked to get one in their hands. Where there definitely wasn't any, this seemed particularly more affected by our programs in East County. Our youth enrichment coordinator out there was literally making school packets and hand delivering them and doing additional personal outreach to families to make sure they were well supported, not only with school stuff, but understanding how to support them in this new teaching environment, and where some of these skill sets, you know, we're all learning. As a parent.
So they're concerned.
What was that?
Yeah, as a parent. I guess, as a concern that the people are going to move and they're never going to get them back or something if they leave them with them for 2 months or 1 month?
I don't think, well, I don't know. So I can't speak for the school district. It's just at the end of the year, one of the steps we've taken is to check in with the school district to see if the kids can keep them. And I don't know where the progress is on that individually, but I just think it's one of those things that may not have been thought through for those folks who are more affected by others, you know, who don't already have access to technology. I don't think it was like the summer.
Seems so far away, huh?
Yeah, I think that the original. So anyway, long story short, we are continuing to get technology in the hands of our clients who need it.
Yeah, good, because I mean, they could benefit from that all summer. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie? All right. I'm going to skip Sophia, put you with our discussion at the end. We're kind of crazy today. And Judy's not here, so why don't we finish up with Leslie so we can get into some discussion. Assuming, Leslie can't talk. Are you still unable to talk, Leslie? You can send
Leslie put a report in chat in case she was unable to be heard.
Okie doke. Okay. Super.
Jan, did you want to skip me until later?
I was going to skip you so that you would flow into our discussion about short and long-term range solutions.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Okay.
And
so somebody should read Leslie's report if she can't do it herself. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is in chat. Trinity Center is back home at 1888 Trinity Avenue, ! Operations continue with observance of health protocols. Safe parking continues as well, at least for now, and we are awaiting word on some additional funding that we applied for to use on SPP. Not
Shelter
sure
in place protocols, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Safe parking program.
Safe parking program, of course. Thank you, Mark. We continue to see new members and increased need for services, even at the same time that a number of our members are able to be in hotels through county's project room.
Thank you, Doug. I will mention for Judy Stillman that they did finish up their year. They are now their own 501(c), and they're working diligently looking for next year. Okay, so Sophia, if you will share with us about what's going on at EBO, which is a lot of things. Then we'll move into
sure. We've been engaged in a lot of advocacy around several things. And we'll get to long-term in a minute, but around the short-term stuff, around the eviction moratoria in both the county and also various local cities in Contra Costa. Thanks to all of you who responded to the call. I don't know when that was, a week and a half or so ago, to contact the Board of Supervisors about extending the eviction moratorium in the county. The board did extend the countywide moratorium to July 15th, but there are a few local cities that have longer moratoria in place, and those longer moratoria or the stricter policies are what control. So in Antioch, Richmond, and Pittsburgh, the eviction moratoria extends through the duration of the local shelter-in-place order for the county. And then in Concord, the eviction moratoria is tied to the governor's original statewide state of emergency declaration. And that has been extended currently through the 28th of July. All other local cities in Contra Costa, their eviction moratoria expire on July 15th, unless we can once again convince the board to go further. So that's some information on the local moratoria. Of course, we also continue to work on state policy related to housing and shelter and assistance for tenants and assistance for small landlords, and trying to get good things into the Senate Democrats' overall housing package proposal. And then in terms of long-term solutions and how things, how the housing crisis and how COVID also lines up with systemic racism and responding to issues around, that have been revealed once again around policing and police violence with the George Floyd killings. We put out a statement around shifting money in Alameda County from policing to housing and healing. And because the Alameda County Board has a vote on that tomorrow. But we want to expand that policy work also to Contra Costa County. And so we have some draft language on that we're asking people. We've asked some folks in the Raise the Roof Coalition to give us some comments. I'd be happy to also send that around to this group if folks are interested.
Yes.
In making comments on that, and then figuring out how we push that forward with the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors.
I can't find, oh, Laura, you have a question?
Yes, I'd like to ask something about what kind of healing details are you including?
Well, we've talked about, in general, and I don't have it right in front of me, but in general, increased support for mental health services, other social services and supports, so that when people are in crisis of various kinds, we seek to address the source of their pain and the source of their need, rather than seeing it as an opportunity for policing or for punishment.
I see. I'm wondering if there's, I realize that you probably do this in general, but a focus on listening to the people in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of what we say.
Very important for them to come up with the solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Okay. I'm sure that that's part of your normal way of operating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I received the email from EBHO sent to its member list and whatever extended list you send it to, with a call for people to contact either the Alameda County Board of Supervisors or Contra Costa Board of Supervisors with a specific ask. And so I tried to do that. I clicked on the button for Contra Costa County, and the EBHO's website popped up with some language to send to the Board of Supervisors as a request, and I liked it. And I tried to send it, and it replied, or it instead of confirming that I had sent my message, it said, "We're sorry, but we're not targeting anyone in your district." And so there's something wrong there, because
Okay.
my address is clearly in the district of one of the supervisors for Contra Costa County, namely Candace Anderson. And I don't think there's any supervisor that this wouldn't be targeting. So
No, you're absolutely right. That's a mistake. And thank you for flagging that, Doug. I'll talk to Grover in our office and we'll get that corrected.
Yeah, but if we've got time, I think it would be worth actually reading the language that this ask proposed. Is that okay if I read?
Yeah.
It's like a little over a half a page. So when I saw it, because it didn't go through, I copied it, and my plan was to send it separately to the Board of Supervisors. And basically, the action letter that I was trying to send had a subject line of housing and healing should be the financial priority, not policing and jails. Okay, that's the subject line. And there's an introductory paragraph and 3 asks. The introductory paragraph says, "Day and night, people keep taking to the streets because we are demanding no more murders of Black people by police, no more indifference to the system-wide anti-Black inequality and the suffering it creates. To right these wrongs, I call on you to shift funding from policing and jails and invest in the well-being of low-income Black residents." And then there are, as I said, there are 3 asks. They're numbered asks. First ask is, number 1, extend and strengthen Contra Costa County's eviction moratorium during the pandemic, which has harmed Black and Latina residents at higher rates because of existing racial and economic inequality. Residents who have housing need to be sure they can stay in it. We call on the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors to extend the eviction moratorium and increase the grace period to repay, I'm sorry, I just hit the wrong key. And increase the grace period to repay missed rent to 1 year at your July 15th meeting. The second ask, number 2, create immediate emergency housing for unhoused people. Racial and economic discrimination paired with high housing costs and not enough affordable housing has pushed more low-income Black residents onto the streets than people of any other race. In Contra Costa County, 33% of unhoused people are Black, while Black residents make up only 9% of Contra Costa County residents. We call on Contra Costa County supervisors to shelter unhoused residents in hotels, many of which have already been paid for and are standing empty. And number 3, increase investment in permanent housing for low-income and very low-income people. When you divest from policing, those funds can be used to invest in the health of low-income Black residents, which rests on the foundation of a safe, stable, affordable place to live. We call on you to increase funding for new affordable housing and emergency rental assistance. And so that's the end of the EBHO drafted language that I was being asked to send to the supervisors, and I decided, yes, I would send that to the supervisors. And I'm still in the process of figuring out how, of actually getting to the supervisors. I have all the email addresses I need. I just need to plop that text into my email addresses to send it on my own. But hopefully if Sophia gets the fix made at EBHO, you could just do it by going through the EBHO app.
Do you want to have any discussion about us doing something as a group?
That was not my,
I'm sorry.
I said,
Yeah.
I wanted to know if Doug wanted any discussion on us doing something as a group.
Okay.
I wasn't suggesting that at this point,
Okay.
but you know, perhaps in the context of the last item on the agenda, we could go there.
Okay. Okay.
Doug, could you send us a copy of what you've written so that we can do our version of that?
I could send it to Jan, who could send it out to the
Yeah,
rest
he
of the
didn't
group.
write it. He just, he's sharing it.
Well, but I have it. I mean, I can
Yeah, you have
email
it, yeah.
I can email it to somebody. I know I could email it directly to Laura, but if you want everybody to get it, it would have to go through Jan because I don't have the current list.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I wanted to ask for for a clarification, Sophia, since we have you here to share. I have this letter from April 21st that was sent by the Northern California Housing All Home in EBHO to, well, they went to the local elected officials. But I hadn't, and I'd read it, but somehow I missed it. And as we're talking about fully understanding one action impacts, you know, somebody else. And so on the third page, it talks about while rent relief is critical, that at the time you didn't support total rent suspensions unless they're coupled with support for affordable housing providers and other rental property owners, especially those who rent units at less than fair market rate, as it may lead to the unintended loss of existing affordable housing. And it, you know, it goes on to talk about that. And I haven't read or seen any discussion about what's going on with our affordable housing builders. And I did see something about, and I think it was only through last month, about the percentage of money they had lost in income. I don't know if it was in Alameda maybe, but I hadn't thought about them. And I'm just wondering if you know how they're doing or what we need to be cognizant of when we go and ask for things.
Sure. Yeah, we are trying to, I mean, and we've asked our developer members to reach out to us and talk to us about what they're seeing and what they need. I mean, broadly, the issue with cancel rent for affordable housing developers and why it makes them to some degree nervous is, you know, if people who can pay rent, if they are still working or they still have income, don't pay, then, you know, eventually developers are not going to be able to keep the lights on in their building. And it's important for folks to get mortgage, or the developers to get mortgage relief, and in some cases they have, but the rental money doesn't just go to pay the mortgage, it also goes to pay the services staff and the services, you know, for the residents, which in many cases during the time of COVID has the services have increased. So the costs are going up while the income is going down. And one of the things that would be very important in additional legislation that might come through come from Congress, for example, would be, of course, assistance to cities and states, but also assistance to affordable housing developers, and that was, a lot of it was included in the, or at least some of it was included in the HEROES package passed out of the House, but that's stuck in the Senate.
Yeah.
So it is a big concern, because if, you know, the nonprofit developers have some level of reserves for a few months, but it's not, you know, it's not never ending. And of course, the bigger developers have larger reserves, the smaller developers have less reserve. And if a lot of those properties get into financial stress, they could, you know, no longer be able to operate, and then potentially they could, you know, go on the private market and be sold, and then we would lose that affordable housing asset to the community. So it's a large concern. It's, you know, something, it's one of the reasons we are working at, obviously we work at the state level, but we're also trying to do more advocacy at the federal level right at this moment than we usually do, because in particular of this issue.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's foundation. I mean, cities don't have money. Nobody's got money. It's
Yeah,
and everybody
the
wants money
states
and needs
need
money.
also.
And I don't know if there are, if there's. So are you hearing from them? Other than we're concerned, or do they have a specific request or a way for help that we could support other than? I guess
I will ask again. I mean, the thing that we've heard most and most recently is we're concerned, and you know, this very likely very shortly could be a problem. But I, you know, I haven't heard anything more specific than that. But we are, you know, now we're at 3 months, right, of shelter in place. So I would expect, based on what we had heard prior, you know, when this started, that we might be getting to the point where it's getting to be more serious.
Yeah, I listened to Laura Simpson, who I think she's the same Laura Simpson who years ago was in Walnut Creek. I found out she's in Hayward, and I was like, oh wow. And you know, there's always a who's gonna get and who's. We can't afford to let the affordable housing people go under. And cities, of course, have some, as she mentioned, you know, have some funding that is there to build affordable housing that they might be able to use in some instances to help them better to save than to lose. And, you know, so I don't know who else other than.
Yeah, I mean, that
cities
is,
have some of
that is one resource. And, you know, in some cities have
some
more money for that than others.
Right.
So that's something that we have asked cities to consider as they're thinking about their budgets, you know, right about now. But of course, those resources are also limited. So right now we've been trying to just put a whole bunch of Band-Aids on a problem that is much larger.
Yeah.
And at some point we're going to need some serious surgery or wound care, and we're still working on that.
Okay, well, yeah, by all means, let us ask again and
yeah. Take that back too.
because somehow I totally missed that. Maybe some other, have missed it as well. And it's, we don't want to lose any affordable housing. And I was re-listening to, I want to thank you for the good webinars y'all put out on your Affordable Housing Week. I finally listened to the second half of one that I listened to a month ago, first half, and reminded us about, because we haven't heard much lately about the Prop 13.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that is, so I went and checked, are we still doing this? So it is on the ballot, and it is, and I had never heard that when that these large corporations that go in and buy up chunks of homes, like in foreclosures, that they're getting the break because they're commercial.
Yep.
And I never had that concept. And so when you think about, we really need to get on the bandwagon with, of course, the voting, and certainly helping get this passed to get funding for schools and housing. And so that's one critical thing I got off of the.
Right. Yeah, that's just
Off of that.
informationally for other folks who may not know. That's Schools and Communities First.
Right.
And it's commercial property tax reform under Prop 13. So it won't do anything for, it will not change at all the rules around residential property tax. But for commercial property tax, it will ensure that the property is assessed more frequently and reassessed more frequently, and is and will help make sure that large businesses, large companies are really paying a decent share for the needs that the state has. It's projected, if it were to pass, to bring in an additional $12 billion a year for schools, public safety, housing, other vital services. So it's a major thing on the ballot, and EBHO will be working very strongly around that for the rest of the year going into the fall election. There's actually an online
petition
launch of the campaign for the fall that's happening sometime next week. I don't remember. It's on my calendar. I can let folks know the date if you're interested in joining that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, but and that's what everyone always stresses. Oh, it's not going to affect residential, but if the residences are owned by a corporation, it will affect them. So,
right.
So that's,
But it won't affect, the average senior citizen.
No, it won't affect the average senior citizen.
In their individual home.
You've got these guys that only buy them for investments. They don't care about the community or
right.
driving up the prices of housing or anything else. So.
What about the effect on the houses that the large corporations own as large corporations? What about the houses? They will be reassessed, and the amount that they pay on the houses they own will be the corporate amount?
Yes, that's correct.
What if they sell the house? Then it's back to the original Prop 13 at whatever the assessment is when it's bought.
Mm-hmm. I think that's how it works.
I think it's extremely important to make it clear that this does not affect the Prop 13 on residential.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to.
And I have family members who say, "Oh, but that's just the beginning. They'll be changing," but they can't do that from a bill that doesn't say that.
Right. That's right.
Like what, 50
Yeah.
years, you know? Doesn't. So that's one thing we can work on. I also heard about, I think from Gloria Bruce, about policies that working on policies that prohibit Section 8, that prohibit, you know, Section 8 affordable housing or something.
Well, you probably mean the outlawing or forbidding the current practice where landlords will refuse to rent to people who have Section 8 vouchers. And there is a bill. In fact, there was a bill that was passed. That
was a bill. It's it passed. It's state law that that's illegal. But, you know, the question is how much enforcement, you know, and how do you enforce that? So.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. She talked about policies that would prohibit, that would change, you know, prohibiting renting to formerly incarcerated. A lot of times they come out and they can't be with their family if they're on Section 8 or something, and they, you know, people can say that they won't rent to them or undocumented or anybody that they want to. Let's see. Of course, we need to elect people who share our views. That we're going to be moving big time into voting stuff. I also heard a lot about the regional collaboration through the Bay Area Housing Foundation Association. What's it called? They kept calling it BAFA.
Are you talking about BAFA? Bay Area Housing for All?
Yeah. And I hadn't heard anything about it for a long time, and I didn't realize where it was and the fact that they changed some of the things that were a problem that they that the people didn't like, be it local control or where the percentages or who was going to get what and all that. But I did see that EBHO is supporting the regional approach, and I did see that. You know, Libby Shaft, you know, had this nonprofit Oakland Fund for Public Innovation that allowed a structure for them to get money. And Richmond set up something like during COVID for helping people pay rent and so forth, right, Doug? I just remember hearing something from John Joya about they got $2 million or something. But has Contra Costa set up any kind of a fund for people to receive funds to help people pay rent and all?
There are a few different funds that have been set up to help people with financial distress of COVID in general. I don't know of any that are, you know, limited to rent, but I think rent would probably fall into the you know, the scope of some of these other funds, like the Monument Impact Fund and others.
Oh, right, the Monument Impact Fund, right.
So the way, and not to take up, you know, too much time, but the way this all ties together, and it does all tie together in a big knot. EBHO worked very hard, and a lot of housing advocates and folks from this group included worked very hard last legislative session to pass a bill, AB 1487, that enabled the creation of the Bay Area Housing Finance Agency, or BAFA, basically a combination, which would be created through a combination of MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, and would allow those two agencies to put a regional measure, a regional funding measure, like a bond or something, on the ballot in all 9 counties of the Bay Area. And everyone would, vote on it together. And if it got the requisite 66%, 2/3 vote, then, there would be money throughout the Bay Area for additional affordable housing production. And there was a formula, and, each county would get a stated percentage, and the money, would have to go this much for production and this much for tenant protections and this much for preservation of existing housing, etc. The board of MTC recently voted not to put a regional measure for additional funding on the November ballot.
Yeah, I tried to find that. I couldn't find it.
Everything was going, we were anticipating a regional funding measure. Things were going ahead until COVID. Right. And then, it was just felt that given the economic distress of so many people, they weren't going to want to vote additional, taxes on property or other things to fund the housing. So there will not be a regional measure on the ballot.
Did they pass the structure though? That was the thing that
yes. So the structure is there. We still have to do advocacy with those regional bodies to make sure they set up the new agency so that it can function, and in 2 years we can put a regional funding measure on the ballot. So there's still advocacy work to make sure the agency gets set up strongly. There will not be a regional funding measure on November ballot, which makes schools and communities first all that much more important. And also, eventually the regional funding measure will be important because there are 2 ways that local communities really can prevent housing from being built if they don't want it to be built. One is through zoning and passing restrictive zoning laws that keep affordable housing out of certain communities. And the other is through not allocating local funding, or in jurisdictions that don't have local funding, to help developers, to put into the funding mix to make projects more attractive to the state for state funding, for example. So in cases where local funding isn't available or wouldn't be provided by a city that wanted to be exclusionary, having regional funding would help fill some of that gap. So ultimately, it's going to be important. It's going to be an important intervention, but we're going to have to wait at least another 2 years for that.
Well, Libby felt like if we could get the structure up, we would get some benefit, not obviously the amount of
Sure.
money.
Yeah, the structure has to get up, but there's more advocacy that's going to be required.
Done for that. Okay, because I couldn't find the date when they were going to even vote on that. So besides passing things that would help generate money, and besides looking at working with the county to try and move funding from policing over to services, are there other areas that anybody knows about that we could work to get more help for housing?
Well, I don't know if anybody's noticed the too long typing I've done in the chat room.
Oh, hi, from Scott to everyone.
Yeah. Sorry, but I've been listening. But I apologize again for my camera being broken. I can't
It's
figure
okay.
this out. But I continue to believe, with my limited knowledge, that what I noticed when I was working with the core homeless outreach teams and the homeless issue continues to be a problem that potentially has easier solutions. And like I stated in the chat, while legislation and funding is really important, I feel like it continues to be very complex, maybe more complex as we move forward. And in many ways is a stopgap solution in that when funding's cut or when a system is being built that relies on subsidies, which are being paid by, you know, taxpayers and others, I continue to wonder why we don't lean more into high density housing. You know, the simplest way, too simple way to put it is, you know, when I walk into IKEA and I look to the right and see that little 300 square foot apartment they've set up, and think, wow, if I was single, that looks pretty awesome. I'd rent that. And I have, you know, children in their 20s. You know, I have a son and a daughter who are both in their 20s. My son's been lucky enough to buy a house in Concord, but my daughter's actually relocated to Maryland, where she finished her schooling, partially because of a housing crisis. They would rent these high density area buildings too. So in my mind, you know, just too simplified. In my mind, it's getting the city and builders interested in building a multi-story apartment complex that has, say, you know, 500 square foot apartments with some sort of fixed rent that makes sense financially for everybody, of, you know, I don't, just to throw a number, $500 to $750 a month, which sounds unobtainable in the Bay Area, right?
Right.
But if we were able to build, you know, you can fit so many more units inside of a standard apartment complex doing that. And I believe, and I've had some light discussion with Pleasant Hill City government officials, you know, you can incentivize builders to make that more attractive, and you can get a lot more people paying rent in those areas. I mean, if you have a 500 square foot apartment that you're charging, you know, $750 a month, for instance, for, you're probably making very close to what you would have made to put in a 1,500 square foot apartment, which seems to be the direction things are going. And I just continue to wonder, and we wouldn't have to subsidize those units, you know, necessarily. And people that are retiring with only Social Security benefits right now, which I saw working on the streets with the homeless, was often less than $1,000. They would come closer to at least being able to afford that. I could even see an elderly couple. I could see my wife and I, you know, I'm 55, but I could see us if we were elderly and retired and needed a place to live. I could live in a tiny apartment like that, much easier than a, you know, a Ford, you know, the model's flying out of my head, Explorer that I encountered a couple living in with their cats at the Martinez Marina, you know. So anyway, to make a long story endless, I just wonder if high density housing shouldn't be something that this committee should also be paying attention to and trying to help produce.
Laura?
I think St. Paul's Commons is an example of that. Maybe not quite as small units as what you're talking about, but it's high density, 42 units in a 4-story, not too large a footprint building. And I understand that Don is working with another such project in Brentwood. And those were subsidized to some extent by the city. But right now, the cities are going to have a budget problem with all the expenses of the COVID situation. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do subsidizing housing. They're going to have to they're looking at cutting police forces and fire forces and those things, and I don't know. But I think some of that has been done, and it's been shown to be possible.
Yeah, and getting back to the subsidized, I mean, at some point that becomes unsupportable, right? We can't, nor do we want to subsidize absolutely everybody. And so that's the other flip side of this, is if you weren't spending so much money subsidizing housing, it could be spent elsewhere. Hopefully not on the military. But anyway, let's
Yeah.
Well, I just looked at the clock and we got about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And I think we have, oh, Doug's got the comment. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I certainly agree that there's a tremendous need for that kind of housing in Contra Costa County. And you're talking mostly, Scott, I believe, about housing that was most suitable for single adults, not
Or
families.
couples. Yeah.
Perhaps couples, yeah, but
Right, no
but
kids.
I think the need in terms of homeless people in Contra Costa County, the biggest need really is for singles, and couples
Yes.
too, sure. The homeless program a couple of years ago did basically a one-time snapshot of what the market looked like in terms of housing for single home, for people who were homeless and single, looking for a place for just a single occupancy apartment, and found there was a really serious mismatch. You're going to have, I don't remember the details of the survey, and I know you're going to have questions about, well, what was the price range and things like that. I don't know any of that details, but
Right.
what they found was that for a population of roughly 1,000 people who would be looking for such single apartments, a survey of Craigslist at that particular time showed only about 100 units available. And so that's the kind of mismatch I was talking about. At the same time, they found that there wasn't anywhere near that mismatch for larger apartments suitable for families.
Yeah.
The big need was for apartments for singles.
And then you get a lot of homeless people on the streets that won't go into shelter because they don't want to live in a dorm style, or they've been too hurt emotionally and physically to trust at first. And so single occupancy is important. I would often, go through Craigslist with a homeless client, under a tree out in the city of Pleasant Hill or Martinez, looking for rooms to rent, and they were not excited about it. I don't want to rent a room in someone else's house. That just makes me feel strange. And I don't know. I mean, this is something maybe for the next meeting or another meeting. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I strongly suggest that this committee push more in that direction, as in some way. And I would be willing to figure out what that means, even though I absolutely despise politics and all of that.
Yeah, I think we have supported, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and EBHO supports upzoning too in some situations that might be needed for something like that. There are racial equity and other concerns, and in general as well. I think if it had been profitable for private developers to do that kind of development, it would have been done. So the market clearly has a role, but it can't solve everything, and just building more also isn't going to solve the issue. I mean, there is such a level of need that we need all kinds of different solutions, and we always need to prioritize racial and economic equity and diversity as we're thinking about things. So it's definitely it's something to talk about and but probably would not be a standalone solution.
No. I also think it's a unique moment in time in California, at least, where we have a governor who seems to be very concerned about the homeless situation, who's willing to throw a lot of money behind efforts, you know, thinking of these hotels.
Well, yeah, and was willing to throw a lot of money behind solving the problem before the COVID crisis hit.
Right. But if we, you know, this isn't something that would happen next week, right? But if we just start putting that buzz in our, you know, the people's ears that we have some influence with, I think it's a positive direction. I agree, Sophia. It wouldn't be the only effort, obviously, but could become a major one, and maybe like thinking of EBHO and others, you know, something that you know, they could even partner with other organizations to not reinvent the wheel and to make sure that there's racial and economic and all other types of equality, right?
I'd like to mention, I know that we're running out of time.
Yeah, we are.
In my 20s, I rented a room in a building in New York City that was near Columbia University. And there were regular apartments in that building, but there were also single rooms that shared a bathroom and a kitchen. And in that arrangement, there was a person that worked for Charles Collingwood in the office of Edward R. Murrow on the radio at that time. There was a Puerto Rican couple. There was a Palestinian woman, and there was a racial mix. And I just really benefited from that because I met some interesting people. We got along just fine, sharing a kitchen. There were maybe probably four of the rooms sharing one kitchen and one bathroom. That's a model that would work. And also some regular apartments, self-contained,
Yeah.
1 or 2 bedroom apartments.
We need to have some zoning changes. I mean, some of these things where this constant wall around single family homes, you know, and this concept that you can't be a contributing member of the community unless you own a home is ridiculous.
Yes.
So let's keep all these things in mind and share as you come across stuff and try and focus on a couple of things here that we can really work on. And we really appreciate all the advocacy that EBHO's doing, and appreciate you having us with us today, Sophia. We're going to meet next month again. You know, no month off. So keep putting people in housing and keep advocating. And when it's time to go to the supervisors or anybody else, we'll be there. We are thankfully doing a lot of good, but we're also really concerned about what happens here in the next month or two when people can't immediately pay those bills, but we do need to consider our affordable housing folks. So it's, yeah, read the fine print, I guess, huh? Work with the advocates like Chu, who really supports this. And we got to find voices in the faith community for this budget that'll be passed in August and that protects people in our communities. And with that, thank you for bearing with us and joining us today, and everybody contributing here in our Zoom chat. Well, I don't know about 5 or 750. I don't know any. I think some of that's a little. You can't even get an ADU for that, but maybe we don't need as fancy stuff in what we build, right? Thanks, Joan. And I'm gonna discontinue this recording, I guess. I don't know how to do it. Does anybody know how to disconnect the recording? Uh-oh.
I would imagine the bottom button that says
Everyone.
record. You could stop it.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Oh, record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, you're smart.
I don't know if it works.
Cloud. I don't know. That's where I sent it.
Jan,
yes.
Do you know if the chats will stay when I do play it back?
Usually
been
there's
trying-
it goes to Christoph.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm
I
gonna-
can,
go ahead.
he said he gave it to me, but I don't know. I don't see, before I totally shut it down.
I'm going to
Usually,
try to copy all of the information now, off of people's comments. If
you're
I can add,
supposed to be able to save.
if I can save it, that would be great.
Let me see if it'll let me copy it. Usually it goes to the person who set it up, but I'm just gonna see if it'll let me copy it. It's what you call a workaround. See if it'll let me actually,
Oh, forget it. Just do it.
okay, so I got it. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great.
Looks
Thank
like
you
it
so
may be
much.
backwards. Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, good. Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you, Jan.
Yeah, there's a lot going on,
Yeah.
constantly.
One
How
thing-
is your social justice committee doing at church?
Well, we are currently working on the Pope Francis, what they
Why,
call
Leslie?
Laudato Si, which is
Mhm.
really about saving the planet and how our ecological situation is impacting the poor,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to tie it in with what, of course, is on everybody's mind here, which is, of course, the last week or two
Right.
issues. So we
It's
are
all
going-
connected. Everything's connected.
we're going to have an hour presentation at what we've been calling our town hall I think on the 17th, for those people who are on the committee to introduce themselves, and then also provide various aspects of what we've been looking at, including even day-to-day things on how you can save and conserve and recycle and do things at home, to those things that you can do legislatively to get a hold of people.
Have y'all connected with the Sustainable Contra Costa and their, what do they call that program? Tyler would shoot me.
We all
It's
have too much in our brains.
It's a program that's set up to help people keep track of what they're their actions and how much CO2 and all that saving and all that. But it's designed to give suggestions. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because he keeps looking for congregations to go out and give it to, or he can do it by Zoom, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's really good. I did it, but he's also looking for congregations. And I thought it was just going to be a year, but actually he said, well, the grant was for 2 years, so they're still doing it. And so it's helpful to. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you order something and they show the calories. And
Yes.
Oh,
interesting.
well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll get something else.
Right. That would be great for somebody to just use at home.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
something you just use on your computer. It makes you stop and think.
Right.
What you can do. You can look at what you've already done.
Yeah.
And altogether, it all adds up to
Right.
stuff for the planet.
Cat,
Well, I hope Christoph's wife is okay. Gosh, that was
what's
you know
that?
those kind of symptoms are so hard sometimes to figure out why. It's troublesome, but it's like saying I have a fever. Okay.
Right.
Okie doke. Good to see
All
you.
right, Dan. Hope you're doing okay.
Oh, this says I'm recording. Oh, gee.
Oh, dear.
Pause. Stop recording. Yay.
Okay.
I guess you're going to get us next.
Okay.
Okay. We
Don't
can
worry.
say-
I won't write it up in the notes.
Oh, good. We're safe.
Take care.
You too.